Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to another episode on Developing with Action Jake. Today, I bring another special guest for you, Trevor Bonomi, or better known by his gamer tag, Asyndesis. Trevor and I talk about what brought him into tech as a career path, but we primarily talk about games, and specifically his solo MMO project, Aether. We dive deep into why Aether exists and what Aether really is. It's a really cool project, and you can find it linked in the description below. I hope you enjoy this podcast on Developing with Action Jake. Trevor, welcome to the show, my man. So happy to have you, man. And I'm going to just start off with the first question. All right. So I want to know what brought you to tech as a career path?
Good question, man. Good opening question. I guess a few things. Started out, I thought I wanted to be an artist. I was always taking art classes as electives in high school. I think I took an HTML class because I saw early on, like we're talking like 1998 internet, people building these websites. I wanted to do more than just like GeoCities, and there's a few other ones like these website builders back then weren't very sophisticated. So I took a class, and I was like the only kid there. The rest of them were there involuntarily. Like, are you taking this like because you want to take it? I remember some lady, she's like, I have to take this for my work. But I think what inspired me though was like some of the early computer games, like Sierra Interactive games. I remember one called Torrens Passage. Maybe we'll get into that stuff more later. But and then WordPress. WordPress opened up the world of tech to me. Just how their plugin system, their theming system was. It made all of my previous attempts to get into programming had failed. And then when I saw how WordPress approached um, being able to build sites with coding, it did something called hooks, which is now a familiar term.
Ahead of its time.
Ahead of its time. So
Matt
many things,
Mullenweg,
man.
he's the WordPress guy.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
he's a
yeah.
great dude, man. He's very like centered, very very stable individual. But anyway, sorry, continue.
I can imagine. And yeah, Automatic, that company still exists.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Mullenweg. Uh, so not to linger on that topic, I think that's most of it.
Well, so tell me what you're doing for work now.
So now, uh, I guess the story starts about 4 years ago. I got a job here in Spain for a company called Jabaal. They help companies relocate their talent. One of their many slogans is "Think Beyond Borders." Basically, we have a platform that makes relocation, all the paperwork, all the craziness, all the laws for each country a lot more approachable, um, pleasant for both talent and whatever party is going to hire them. It's a really cool place. But mostly, I think our connection, the
Yeah,
California to Spain connection,
I
is
know. Right as we
fighting
start recording
right now.
too.
Yeah, right on. But doing React stuff, building UIs, messing with APIs, that kind of thing.
Well, dude, so my follow-up question to that was what brought you to Spain? Is that the answer to that question is a Jabatical, that company in particular?
Good question. I won't go too into detail. It's kind of a long story. Maybe I can do it with bullet points. So, lived in my parents' attic, not their basement. I lived in their attic, which is
In the
slightly higher
States.
status
In the
in the
States,
States.
obviously, yeah.
Yes, yes. May or may not have been partaking in the cannabis culture at that point in my life. Uh, And that's where actually Aether, my JavaScript MMO, was really born. Well, maybe its second life was really born there, I'll say. So no job, living in their attic. I just quit my current job, was madly burning out on programming, was actually thinking of becoming an electrician, was trying to work for like a union or something, thinking about like, I got to figure out my future, man. Like, I didn't really know how to program in React. I didn't know any of the new web tech. Uh, so it was really just struggling. And it was a really scary point in my life, actually. A friend of mine, I've kept in touch with for years. I'd been friends with him since like middle school, I want to say. His name's Stefan. Called me and said, "Hey," he's like, "you just quit your job." He's like, "Why don't you come to Spain? I'm about to move there. I'm about to live with another guy there, get an apartment. Come live with us, pay some rent, get 3 months on your Schengen Visa. Just see what happens. Just come visit." So I did. Uh, I was terrified. I'd never lived in Europe. I'd never lived in. I'd never actually traveled. Actually, I think at that point I'd been to France. He invited me a few years before to come just for a week or two when I was working the previous job to stay in France. You're taking me back, man, through all my trials and tribulations. But stayed in Spain with him. He actually ended up getting me a job where I'm working now. He was working for them at the time. He actually left the job and kind of swung in like a ninja, got me the job, and then made his exit. Really cool guy.
This is what
Lucky.
networking is all about.
You said it, man. You
Well,
said it.
dude, so that's super cool. Also, this is a side tangent. I have no idea what a Schengen Visa is. Could you elaborate a little bit? I'm probably
So
pronouncing that wrong.
no, you got it. And I should know all of the details for it, working for a relocation company. But the things I do know is that if you come over from the United States, there are several countries that participate. I think the countries in the EU, um, and there's certain rules about it. So you can stay in the EU for up to 3 months, I think, on this visa, and then you have to exit the EU for some said duration of time before you can get another Shenzhen visa and stay here 3 months. It's all the countries trying to protect their borders, I guess, protect people from just squatting there.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
And
part of what we're trying to fix with
mhm,
the job that
I
I'm
get that
working at now.
with
Yeah,
Jabatical.
with Jabatical, right on.
But what it sounds like is that you don't necessarily have to have a job to get this visa. Is that the case?
You
Like
don't.
you could just travel with it.
You can just travel with it, but
Hmm.
you can only stay for three
Yeah,
months and then you have to go, and
got it.
unless you find a job.
Okay, I'll have to look into that more because I've been getting interested in like international travel and perhaps some working opportunities.
Right
So
on, man.
so dude, change the subject a little bit, but you mentioned Aether, your JavaScript MMO, and a majority of this conversation is going to be surrounding that. But before we get there, I wanted to ask you what your favorite childhood video games were.
Such a such a wonderful question. So many. We could spend a lot of time on this one too. I'm sure if the question was pointed at you as well. Uh, so the one that I have to mention, the one that completely revolutioned my idea of video games beyond Mario Brothers and Super
Mm-hmm.
Mario World and like Ninja Turtles, I think Turtles in Time, like all these initial games that I got into early with my dad buying a Nintendo. Uh, and then I remember like when you find a game like this, I think I talked to you for a bit about when you first discovered Ocarina of Time. Like
Mm-hmm.
you remember the setting around you, remember who was sitting next to you. It's such a clear moment in time. I told you my cat was gonna. Did you hear
Oh,
the bang?
your cat's
Yeah,
part of the interview now. It's totally cool.
she wants. Yeah, she wants her time on the microphone. She, she's knocking over cereal boxes to have that happen.
That's
But
totally fine, man.
I remember this specific time of a friend of mine showing me Earthbound and the idea of open world inside of a Super Nintendo cartridge. The fact that there's these NPCs walking around in random places that have things to say, and what they say changes based on where you are in the game. Um, it felt like walking outside into the real world. Not to mention, Earthbound is a story of a kid that wakes up to some strangeness. A meteorite lands in his backyard. He goes to investigate, results in him finding friends in different parts of the world that speak to him almost in the game telepathically. Uh, uh, and then the boy has to travel the world. It's just I've lived by a lot of the strangeness that happens in that game, and there's like endless YouTube videos talking about the all the quirks and pieces of that. But it definitely I had to mention Earthbound. Uh, Several other PC games kind of come close
Mm-hmm.
to that experience. I want to mention I have a Muro board that we
Mm-hmm.
can look at that talks about a game called Grawl. I think that's probably one of the earliest, biggest inspirations for Aether. But
Yeah, man,
yeah,
let's get right into it. The next question I have was, what made you decide to work on Aether? So it's probably a good transition to begin having that conversation.
cool, cool. Um, so probably I should share my screen, right?
Yeah, go for it.
Let's see how this works. Sharing screen, screens, this screen. Okay, so we have Aether open right now. Let's go to the Miro board. So Grawl. So what do
Sweet.
you think?
Yeah, yeah, this is a perfect starting point.
Okay,
And I
so
got you I got your screen pulled up by the way.
okay, excellent. So this game, you'll see the Chrome of the what is this Windows 90? I don't want to make a guess. It looks like 98. I bet you this is Windows 98, maybe 2000. It's one of the two. But like all of these icons at the bottom are just memories. This was the internet of those times. You had this AOL Instant Messenger, which was basically like I don't know, your WhatsApp. This was like anybody that you met in your class, like you'd get their screen name. This was what you'd use. MARC was like a text-based chat. You could do all sorts of stuff, even download torrents early on, like files. I don't think it was torrent based. There's just like a server you could download like illicit files
Mhm.
from. This was your audio player. But I remember Grawl finding this. I think I found it with just like a Yahoo search back when Yahoo is the big search engine. And it's essentially Zelda. It went through a lot of different phases, but the earliest version of it was Grawl Classic, which was basically you see your hearts here, actually yin yangs. You have like the glove that lifts up rocks. You have like the sword to attack with, boomerangs. It was basically a Zelda clone with online support, and it was built by these Linux nerds. And my computer barely ran it at the time, but I was fascinated. Like getting like literally 5 frames per second. I was still trying to play it. I think 133 megahertz. Just couldn't do it. But uh, online play, they had different servers that you'd connect to. Uh, this, I would say, was the biggest inspiration for Aether. Like just being able to be part of this world. Uh, the neatest thing about it, I think, was the fact that you could upload your own art if you knew the owner of the server or you were part of it. Um, and it 2D, like the heads, the swords, the shields, depending on the server, you could set your sword to be some custom piece of art that you made. And I thought that was just really neat that all the art in the game was like user generated. Um, there's something called player worlds. I don't want to spend too much time
No,
on Grawl,
I
but
want you to go into Play Worlds and I want you to go into like the web archives and show that like you were there, man.
yeah, I set foot on this moon back when it was actually still revolving.
Yeah, yeah.
So all of this stuff
Mhm.
um, exists now in a lot simpler way. And even before this, I'm sure there was predecessors to Grawl that had this figured out. I mean, just iterations on top of iterations. But Grawl had a like chat room client where you could manage the server with a team. So like you could rent a server, you could customize even your remote control. You can see this uh, Pulse RC. They even customized their tool for connecting to the server. They have a custom background. It says turds instead of people. A lot of memory has happened in our server that we leased was called Meloria, uh, and you chat with like some of the artists. Everybody had a role. Like there was like developers, artists. It's like it was just really like a microcosm for like a product team in this day and age. But there was just kids. There's like 14, like 16-year-olds like working together, and it was like serious business.
It was
You get in here,
it was like
like
Roblox before Roblox was a thing.
yes,
Hmm.
yes, 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 yes. See, just like iterations on the same concept because it's a
Hmm.
good concept. Could upload all the things I was saying, like bodies, heads. Like this to me was amazing. Uh, they had all this GUI set up for performing. Like you could upload FTP scripts. You had like an NPC server, which was running all of the little characters on your server, and then you had like the player server that held all the players. Um, they had an animation editor. They had everything. Uh,
And they
but our server,
the team of Linux nerds, as you put it, they built all these tools, like the animation tool and everything.
I think so,
Yeah,
man. I think so.
it's crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just so cool to
yeah,
see, man. Like this internet
yeah.
history.
Yeah, and the communities that were sprung up around it. It was really hard to find a lot of these pictures. It's like almost like Atlantis. It's like
Hmm.
buried history, man. Like I wonder just because back then, like people weren't really taking screenshots and streams, like so it's hard to find this stuff. But this was our server. You can see my early Photoshop creations here. Like
The UI
kind of,
elements.
yeah, yeah. So like the little ropes holding together the wood boards. Like we had a party like where you could invite the programmer for this was really a cool guy. I think his name was Symbonia. I've tried to track him down and I couldn't, but I somehow made it onto the server as an artist. You can see here this was 2002, I think, and you'll see the list. You'll see Aether Trebs here was logged in to their PHPB board. Forget what PHPBB or was it? I don't remember what this software was, but you can see like there's an update by this guy here, Mr. Worry. I remember his name, where I made several swords for the different nations that were on our server. So like
I
just
love that,
cool piece
dude.
of history. But this is really what gave me the taste. I met one of these guys in his world, and he was one of the devs. And I was like, how cool would that be to be like running this world, having people playing it, and you're building it while they're playing it.
It's so cool, man. It's like true collaboration from a game dev perspective. Dude, I remember playing Grawl online. It was one of those things like, oh my gosh, like online Zelda, like yes. Like what
Such a
else? What
good,
else do
yeah.
you want? Um, can we get? I know there was a video on the Muro board. Can we just get a quick snapshot just for perhaps to reminisce a
Hey,
little bit? What did this game look like in action?
so I wish that we could see some of the interfaces for items, but they
Hmm.
didn't get any of them. But it's just
Yeah, so this is like, and quality's not great, but that's fine. We get the idea. But it's truly like Zelda, like action based
potato
combat.
Zelda.
Yeah,
Yeah,
potatoes.
potato quality Zelda.
I mean, yeah, those server ticks. There's no way they're doing too many of those a second.
No, I mean there's lag from the video, but also the game itself.
Yeah, yeah.
The NPC, so we were pushing Grawl to the max at that point in time.
I love it. And there's your UI in this
Yeah,
in this YouTube video. We've
yep,
captured it. Um,
yeah.
Dude, well, that's super cool. So obviously, and we're gonna show the people Aether your project, and I'm really looking forward to that. Before we go into that, do we do? Was there any transition or like influence you wanted to talk about with fantasy online? Because just a little context, the way I found Trevor was through a subreddit called Fantasy Online, which I never played Fantasy Online, but it was a famous Flash MMO game back in the day. Again, made by one dude, but had these like player creation elements in the game, and it. All I know is it inspired so many people. And Noia Dev,
Exactly.
first episode on this podcast with Splosions, was uh, his project Noia is a huge influence from that game. So I've been finding all these little like one person MMO projects from this specific game, and your game Aether is no different, but it does seem like your game seems a lot more inspired. Aether seems a lot more inspired by games like Grawl Online and traditional Zelda games than like Fantasy Online.
Fantasy Online was a big one, though.
Okay.
Definitely don't want to forget that. And it's the same situation where the guy that started Fantasy Online, I think his name was Gamer. I logged in. This time I remember the exact time and place, the same, of where I was when I first found Fantasy Online. I was in the basement of my ex-girlfriend's mom's house with her, and we were smoking cigarettes, and we were like, we played WoW, like it was too much. We didn't want that much commitment. We were playing a game called OMG Pop in our browser that was like, it had all these little mini games, like the bubble game where you shoot and match up the bubbles, like
I
bubble
remember
Tetris.
that game, I feel like.
Yes, we loved that. We found Fantasy Online, and when we logged in, Gamer was sitting in the middle of the early starting area, like working on it, and he had more advanced gear on. I got the impression that he might be the dev, and I started talking to him, like, how did you get this running? I mean, ahead of its time, and I think that's why it inspired so many people. It ran in a browser, so it was really accessible by anyone. You searched for online browser MMOs. It was like, it was one of the only ones it popped up. He was using, I think, Flash and
He was to start Flash.
Fox server or something. He had
Yep, Fox server.
something. Yeah.
I think that's the exact name. I could look it up later and add it to the show notes. But Gamer's still active. So Fantasy Online 2 is a thing, and I've been following the Discord, and he's using the same infrastructure, but instead of Flash, so his front end now is HTML5 web tech, but he's using the same like Fox server for his MMO backend. Very, very interesting project. And, I've talked a little bit about this. My previous experience making games was Flash back in the day. And I would always there was kind of like an open source flavor to Flash back in the day where you could download someone's like source files and look at the how they built their games inside Flash. And I would download like online games, in particular games that had an online component, and I would always be like, how the heck did they do this? Like, what are they setting up? Because I want to make a multiplayer game. So whenever I look back at the history, a project like Fantasy Online, what he was able to accomplish with the limited amount of resources you had back in the day with Flash is truly impressive.
And that's why it inspired so many people. He was there with that many ideas that early. It's just, for sure.
Well, cool, man.
We'll interview him.
Yeah, dude. I should I should reach out Gamer. Yeah, I'm in his
retelling
Discord.
of how he did it. Like, how he. Yeah.
That would be cool, man. I'll have to reach out. That would be a good conversation to have. I'm sure a lot of people would want to hear that, and especially because he's still active. Like you said, like sometimes we remember gamer tags from back in the day, and then it's like, man, I wonder if they're still around. Like, what are they doing? They're probably doing something cool. If, like when they were 12 years old, they were building like an MMO of Flash. So dude, we've talked about these influences: Grawl Online, Fantasy Online. Talked about your non-online influences like Earthbound and some of those games. So I think now's a good time. We want to show the listeners just a little bit of gameplay of Aether. And
let's dive in.
We've been talking about it. Why don't we just show them? Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right, cool, man.
I got some presents in there for you too. I added a few extra Git commits.
Well, I'm
to
looking
your
forward
account,
to it. Okay. Let me go full screen here. I know the hotkey. So I'm Jake1 at jake.jake, right?
Yeah, I'll log in as Jake2.
All right. My password is definitely not Jake. Don't hack my account, please.
We're in, man.
Oh,
I'm gonna mute the
man.
music. We're in.
Yes. Oh, heck yeah, dude. My guy looks way better. So you gave him a beard and some hair.
Yeah, I did indeed. Maybe open up your inventory. I think we can get him to look a little more like you.
Wait, I can put this on?
It's a helmet. We got the
oh my god,
the cranium of Action Jake.
Okay, so I put it on my head. Oh my.
There you go. We're in, man. We're in. We got some of that head bob action too when you run. Made sure that I had that.
Dude, how did you have so
It's
many
uncanny. This is inspired by Grawl, man. Like you could chop
my
up. People did that too. They'd chop up their face and put it into the game.
I love that so much. We're gonna get some great content out of this. All right, well, I think we need to go kill some high-level monsters and show people what this game's all about.
So bust open your inventory. You might want to go with melee weapons. I gave you some new.
The hot dog?
Yeah, it's the unique version of the club. But they don't have if you look at their attack speed buff, they don't have any reduction to attack speed, so you can just pummel stuff. They don't do any damage either, though. This is one of the things that Diablo 2 I didn't mention, but if Diablo 2 didn't exist, Aether wouldn't exist. Their item system and just how you'd have a root item that stats were based on top of. Being able to modify that. Oh man, I'm getting hit by a hot dog. They put on both hot dogs, man.
Oh, I can put them both on.
Dual wield those son of a guns.
Okay, good to know. Oh, yeah.
See, currently they don't do any elemental damage, but whoa.
Double wielding
That's too
glizzies, man. I might be OP.
The glizzies. We got glizzies. Yeah, that attack speed shouldn't be legal.
No, that shouldn't be legal.
We need a cap. We need a cap.
You also better watch out, man. I might hurt you.
See how many hits from hot dogs I can take before I die.
There we go.
This is science.
This is science. This is.
Ready?
Don't try this at home, kids. All right, here we go.
Yeah. We don't have any mustard damage. I don't think it's an element in this game.
Oh my god, dude!
Damn.
I almost crit you to death.
Yeah, they have 25% crit.
All right. Well, I thought this was going to be a challenge, but with the hot dogs and the action Jake face, I don't think any monster can take me down, even at level 1. I'm level 1 still.
Yeah, dude. You got 2 Jake faces to choose from, actually.
Okay. One was... Okay, I did see that. One was red.
Yeah.
Is it like he's red, like he's mad? Oh!
Yeah. That's furious Jake. I think that's the demonic Jake head.
Dude, that gave me so much HP.
Hit me once?
Oh, you're gonna die.
Watch how much damage you do. Yeah, one shot.
Oh, he's back though.
I don't think in any of my tests I ever made an item that strong.
Oh. Okay. I might have to take this off so I don't kill you. But I'll put it back on when we need it.
Yeah.
It's really cool. This is like
Fair
truly
enough.
like a classic, like it's like the classic MMORPG experience with like action combat.
That's what I wanted to have. Grawl Online, it was WASD controls, and it was all about like you'd have duels in the game, like where it was all about who could like predict the server movement better. I remember you had to attack ahead of other people in order to hit them, but you'd have these duels and like your heart would start racing, like you'd settle things like that. I wanted to recreate that. Also, aiming spells. You see me? You can see my aimer.
Oh yeah.
Or I spin. I think I gave you a spell. Press 1 on the keyboard. I think I gave you a fireball.
Oh yeah.
There you go. You got like a high level one. Good. Ooh, almost one shot. I think that's a level 3. So the spells, all of my choices in this game were to make sure things and systems scaled in a way. Even the graphics, like I only did 4 different directions because I didn't want to sit in sprite editing hell. Spells, like how can I make the same resources, the same assets be used by just scaling some values? And I think like that's a lot of what they did in like WoW, but like even the item system, tinting items rather than making new sprites. All the systems I tried to make, I've one developer working on it, just me, so I have to take as many shortcuts like that as possible.
You gotta make it.
Didn't want to compromise. Yeah, but I didn't want to compromise on like. I still wanted a lot of different textures and things, so I'm still sort of in sprite editing hell.
Well, I know how that is, and I think we'll get more into that because I do have a lot of questions, but I think it's gonna be a little distracting. So, shall we show the people maybe just a quick fight, like with maybe something higher level than the crabs, and then we can get back to some questions?
Yeah, maybe cue in some like Lord of the Rings, like epic music as we walk off over the mountains and bridges, and You can do it in post editing maybe. With the
I did
JKs.
mute the music, but I just unmuted it. So
Okay.
we'll start with this as our travel music. We're going going north.
Yeah.
All right, get out of here.
I wish we had like 6 more people in here with Jake heads
man,
on.
that would be great.
This is pretty epic though. This is pretty epic.
Dude, I didn't realize like me being immortalized in a video game was gonna happen this early in my career.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't predict these things. You really can't. And dual glizzies, man. Like
dual glizzies, dude.
Yeah. We'll vary it up a bit. I'll put on a sword. You know?
You gotta spread that mustard somehow.
Yeah, the butter knife, man.
Ooh,
the mustard knife.
I like the town.
You just came up with
music.
a new unique.
Oh yeah, let's go. Yeah, see, look, I bring developmental ideas every which way.
I like it.
Oh,
So we can go up to the
is this
graveyards.
P? Is this your cat P?
No, P's a black cat. She should be in the game though.
She should be.
But talking to animals, that comes from Earthbound probably.
Oh yeah, for sure, dude. This has a lot of. I feel the Earthbound vibes. I feel the Zelda vibes, obviously, but it's unique, man. And I think that's why I like it so much. Like when I found your subreddit post, I was like, man, this game like it looks good. This is what like one of these like classic top-down action MMORPGs should look and feel like, in my opinion.
The controls needed to be smooth. And one thing that we're also probably not going to cover is that this runs on mobile too, with a little on-screen touch joystick.
Oh, is that right?
It's like, yeah, balancing it to work in web browsers, but also with touch controls. So that's why everything's needs to be responsive. That's the reason that I built the UI. If you open up like the inventory and stuff, it looks kind of wonky on desktop. I don't have it like into the center of the screen. It's at the bottom. Because at the bottom is where your thumb would be on mobile.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I don't think that's a problem with like how it looks on desktop.
There's probably like a way to. It's another one of those corner cutting things. Like I could probably make it appear in the center on desktop and then move it down, but like trying to balance the two has always been a challenge.
You could, yeah, dude, we could talk ideas. I'm already, my brain's already going. Like how you might be able to make that work for desktop a little better. But
do you want to go?
Yeah, let's go. Sorry, you go ahead.
I'll follow you. Let's go beat some zombies with hot dogs.
Let's do it. Zombies. Oh my gosh. I'm wondering, should I put on my mad action Jake face just to see what kind of damage we do?
Yeah. I think we should go up and fight the master zombie chonks.
Okay. Should I do that with hard mode or easy mode?
Go for easy mode. It'll be funner to see his health drop when we're only doing 2 points of damage. Actually, we should be in the same party, so I'll invite you.
Oh yeah, that's probably a good idea. Party is which the hotkey?
I think you can press P or the bullhorn at the bottom.
Accept.
Cool, man.
All right, so
we're
now
a team.
I can't hurt you now.
No, and your HP is like 1,000,000 if you hover over your name.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I have I've got a lot. All right, let's take them out. I'm the true action Jake because my head is red. Oh man, I just want. That's a high level monster right there.
Yeah, I never seen him drop so fast. He just disappeared. You just deleted him.
952
Sweet, man.
crit.
Go in that tent. Let's see what's in that tent.
What's in this tent? Okay.
Let's see. Is there any secret items?
There's
little twinklers.
I saw a twinkler.
There it is. You can pick it up with F. So those are random map spawns. There's like various items that can spawn there.
I got a medium HP potion. I'm consuming them all. Wait.
Here, I'm gonna drop your head.
Okay. I'm gonna pick up your head.
Here, give that back. Actually, I want that back.
Oh, you want the head?
So I wanted the item dropping system to be like, I like some confrontation in games. Like Diablo 2, when you went to pick up items, you could make other people mad by grabbing their drops.
Oh yeah.
Eventually, I think if you get a big enough player base, you have to sort of cater more towards people complaining. But I always liked leveraging systems that let people troll other people, because that's how it is in the real world. If you like nerf that stuff too much, your game's really plush. So like, I'd like to build more systems that I could see people hacking, and that's like one of the main reasons for multiplayer is just figuring out how people's minds try to mess up and hack your puzzle
Well, dude,
and other people.
this is honestly like this has got me like juiced up to ask you more questions because honestly, this is like really inspiring. I think people looking at a project like this are like, wait a minute, you made this by yourself and use like some very approachable technology like JavaScript and web technologies. So,
Right on.
dude, unless you want to show me anything else, I say we get back to some questions if you don't mind.
Let's go to some questions for
All right,
sure.
let's do it.
We're
And then,
bouncing around.
yeah. So, and then if you want, you could share your screen on Discord, and then if you want to like keep playing the game and while we talk about it, does that
It might
sound-
help to illustrate if
Yeah.
I'm referring to something for sure. Let's do that.
I'm gonna go ahead and log out.
I don't pay for Discord though, so they make me pay for 180p.
Oh, is that right?
720p. What is this nonsense?
Yeah, it's fine. Well, first of all, maybe because I didn't have our heads up when I was playing the game, maybe you can share your screen real quick and we can just like take a gander at the uncanny resemblance of the Action Jake pixel art. In this.
You took my head though. Oh no, you gave
No,
it
I
back.
gave it back. I gave
Thank
it
you.
back.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, okay. Wait, hold on. I'm not gonna be able to get these side by side, but all right. You got that. You got this.
There we go.
It's uncanny, man. That's
There.
me. That's me in the game. Just a pixelated version.
Yeah, I can't tell the difference. I have to. Which one is the stream? Which one is Jake?
I know, man. Because
To the
he's also
back?
bobbling his head like I do.
Yeah. Whistling while he walks.
Whistling while he walks. That's how
That's
I walk.
not your hair though.
I figured you
That's
did. 'Cause
yeah.
I don't
I
think
couldn't
have
find
a-
in your podcast. No, you
No.
never turn
I
in
could
any
have.
of your podcasts.
I could have. I could have for sure provided something for you, but did you just open an A sprite or something and throw some pixels on the screen? Because it looks like it's the back of my head.
I should buy a Sprite. I'm
Oh,
just too stubborn. I use Photopea or Photopia. It's the browser Photoshop.
Oh,
somebody
that
recoded.
works. Well, dude, A sprite's actually open source, so it's completely illegal to go to the GitHub, download the source code, and build it.
Build it.
And not pay a cent for it, but I'm a huge fan
Pretty
of A-Sprite. I support them, so.
Once I got
Buy
to use it,
copies.
I'd probably buy it.
Yeah.
It looks like a solid piece of software.
Are you familiar with C++ build systems?
I could figure it out.
Yeah, you can figure it out. Also, in the Comfy Game Dev server, we have some binaries, pre-built binaries, ready to go.
It's
So
cool. I
can
could at least
point you in
test
that
it.
direction. Yeah, man. It's by far like my favorite art program. It's inspired. Excuse me. It's inspired so much by Flash Animate, or I guess today it's Adobe Animate.
Okay.
Even though
Cool.
it's not vector art, it's pixel art, but very similar like timeline, very similar like layer system. That's why I love it so much. Anything that reminds me of the old Flash days, I'm a fan of this tool.
Right on.
Um,
Yeah.
Well, dude, not now we've kind of gone off the rails. So let me rein us back in. So the question, which I feel like was answered, I'm gonna pose it one more time. Just if you had any loose ends you wanted to wrap up. But the question was, what was the excuse me, it was, what made you decide to work on Aether? Like, what was the driving factor?
So you brought us right along the path to Aether, just playing games where the dev was sitting in the middle of the world. I
Fantasy
remember
Online.
Fantasy Online, I think, was the defining point when it brought it to me. Like, I could do this. This guy is doing this in Flash. He's doing it in. He's got some service for probably, I don't know if it was WebSockets at the time. I started looking up tutorials, and at that point, after he'd done it, other people were starting to write online tutorials for building tile engines inside of Flash. And then the two main big things were like, how do I have a tile engine that's like buffering only the tiles on the screen? Whoa, do you see those balloons?
Yeah. How did you do that?
I think that's Apple's new
Oh, they can figure out hand motions or something.
Yeah,
Well, anyway,
so unintentional.
that's cool. Um, so it seems like it was like games like Fantasy Online like showed you that it could be done. You're like, if this guy can do it, I can do it.
Right on.
And
Earlier than that,
mhm,
there's a few other influences I could just
sure,
name drop. Just I
go
don't know
for
if
it.
anybody's
Uh,
heard of them. It might
mhm.
ring some bells. Uh, there was a chat program that was the precursor to like Habbo Hotel and or what was it, Hotel Penguin, where you join in a window and you can click around and move your character and chat with people. There's one called the Palace, and it had its own scripting system
Mhm.
that if you had a server, you could script and like an NPC that was running the client to do different things. And somebody, I didn't talk about Chrono Trigger, but also one of the most amazing games of all time. Somebody had taken a robot from Chrono Trigger. There's an enemy called Bit, and I remember him sitting there the same as Gamer was in the middle of his server programming Bit to receive chat commands like Bit, come to me, Bit, come. And I remember the Bit would do a little animation and then come to him. I was like, this is amazing. Like I
That's
started
awesome.
questioning him. How did you do this? How are you running another client? How is it? And he wouldn't teach me.
Mm.
And that,
What
I
game
mean,
was
there's
that? Was
probably
that
too
in
much to
Grawl?
explain. That was called the Palace. It was
Oh,
a
that
chat.
was the Palace. Okay.
That was the Palace. For sake of time, I won't. I made a board for that too,
Yeah.
but we won't. We won't
Well,
enter that world. But
it might warrant another
huge inspiration.
conversation to go through all of these influences because I think like as we've been kind of having some preliminary conversations, a lot's been coming up for me where it's like, man, this is a long path to get to where you're making this today. A lot of influences, a lot of different projects, a lot of dead ends. Because I know you've also built this in a myriad of different technologies, right? Like this would Aether existed in some form prior to HTML5 JavaScript, right? Its current
Indeed, you
form.
brought it up several times. It started
Mm,
in Flash,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
um, and then I think three different attempts with HTML technology after that.
Got it. And did you in Flash like did you actually have like WebSockets working with like
I
a
did. They
wow.
had they had a socket library, and there was some free service similar to I think what Fantasy Online was using. So it wasn't. Uh, I think it was like a subscription based service or something that I started with just to make it easier to manage that part.
Well, dude, that really kind of ties into the next question really well, which is, I was going to ask what was the hardest part of building this?
Probably the thing that's uh, just boggled me and uh, caused constant um, reworks, and it's just net code, just
Yep.
syncing client and server. Probably like right now in its current form, I'm using TCP packets. There's probably a way that I could be using WebRTC, UDP, uh, client prediction. Right now, it's probably still wildly inefficient. That's the part that's just like I keep thinking like, is there any sort of library I can shift to if I'm gonna ever get this thing off the ground? Because collision, like when you have like 30 people in the game, when you're running around obstacles, the servers got to know like where walls are, where they aren't. And then if the game ever does get successful enough, like all of that stuff has to be hack proof on top of it. So netcode, man, hands down. Everything else sort of is solved for me. Phaser does all of my tile work.
Hmm.
It's doing all of the so I'm extruding my tiles in Phaser plus tiled is able to understand that the tiles have a little bit of space between them so that when the screen is zoomed you don't see all those black lines, like all of those little efficiencies on the front end are handled for me. But netcode, man,
Dude, that's a
it's
big one, man. I mean,
it's
it
a real,
it
yeah.
harkens back to those days. Like I was hacking old Flash projects. Like, how the heck did they bolt on a networking layer? Like, and I also wasn't much of a programmer when I was like 12
I'm
years old.
still not.
Plug it
I'm
around.
still not. Yeah.
Yeah. But dude, oh man, you also brought up Habbo Hotel or Habbo Hotel, however you pronounce it. That was a game, another game project.
Did you play it?
Dude, I played the heck out of that game. And of course,
I'd never played that one.
I didn't you had to like use real money to like buy anything in that game. And I was never going to I was too scared to ask my parents for the credit card. They wouldn't understand. I need these furniture for my room that I'm trying to make a cool pet.
Man,
But
man,
dude, that
what
was
did you do?
well, I really it was like a social game. So there's like they had mini games, but really you're just like kind of meeting people online, their little avatars,
Right
like
on.
chatting. Coke made one. I think it was called like Coke Music, like Coca Cola, and
Funny you brought that one up. I
that
met a
was like a
guy.
Hubba Hotel clone. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I met a guy that at some party years ago, probably a lifetime ago.
Mhm.
He was all proud of himself for hacking the Coke one,
Yeah,
and like being able to get through the walls to
you would see that all the time, dude. You same thing in the hobo hotels. Like they're like
right on.
people always man
I love
something
that though.
those isometric graphics too. So much nostalgia. It's like you see a frame of that. I might have to edit in like a frame of Hobo Hotel here and just like show the people what we're talking about.
Yes.
But so and I know we're kind of bouncing around. Like another question about Ether, I've already asked, like it's been through multiple iterations, but could you put a date timestamp on like when you would say this project started, like Ether day one development? Do you remember how long ago that was?
I probably have the FLA files, and I remember I might have mentioned to you that the word Unity was on some of the packages that I was using. I remember in Flash, so
Unrelated to Unity?
maybe related. I'm not sure, but I remember that being some of the package. Maybe somebody that's watching this will remember.
Mhm.
But I think we could probably date it to when Fantasy Online was running. Because that's right after I saw that. I remember just going full force into trying to get those two things working.
So
Tile system.
2008 maybe? Is that too
That sounds pretty accurate, man. 2008, 2009, maybe.
And you had played with Flash prior to all that.
Right on. Flash, I remember everybody that saw the early days of Flash. There was newgrounds.com
Mhm.
where people would go, and that was a community around uploading your cartoons, just talking everything Flash. Before Apple drop kicked Flash into another dimension, that's that's where I started to make just stupid animations.
Dude, well, okay, now I got us up on three screens. We got the stream, you and me. I like this better so we can see us. Okay, so let me move on to the next question because it's really interesting to me. Why multiplayer? Why were you so gung ho about getting it to be like an MMO online?
So probably two of the things that I would be most passionate about making would either be, I mentioned Earthbound, a world that feels, well, maybe it boils down to just one word, really, a game that's immersive.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's multiplayer, you have sort of a shortcut where people can create the content for you. It can feel immersive because
Mm-hmm.
people are populating the world and they're either abusing or using the systems that you've built to generate content, to generate amusement. That fascinates me. I figured that was a bit, I think, like me, I'm not really a great artist. I'm not the greatest programmer in the world. Uh, I'm not the greatest writer. Like the list goes on and on. I figured like multiplayer was maybe a better fit because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't need to write all this stuff. Like maybe people would come in and if I built these systems, they could make it fit together. They could make it work. They'd be the missing element. If I were to build a single player game, coming from Earthbound being my biggest inspiration, that's an impossible act to follow. That world feels it's from 1995 and it still stands its ground as a cult classic.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Every system in that game, the amount of detail, the amount of influence it has from the outside world, the I could just keep going on. Just it's an insurmountable amount of work. If you
Mm-hmm.
look at the guy that created that, he was writing out like just kind of a creative maniac. He was writing out the things that every NPC would say on note cards and handing those to the development team, like a stack. Uh, all of the Beatles influenced musics. I couldn't compete with that. To build a world, that's what I'd want if I were to
Mm-hmm.
build something single player, like something that almost feels like its own genre. Like you enter into it and you're like, oh my God, like I don't want to leave. But in order to do that, that's a ton of world building, man. That's like it's culture building, really. It,
World building, culture building. I mean, dude, you brought up Earthbound earlier, and it's something I wanted to mention because it reminds me about the magic of like software and especially like building a video game. Like, yeah, man, back in the day, you put in an N64 cartridge. For me, it was Zelda Ocarina of Time. You put that, and it's like the whole world is in this like small little cartridge, and then now that I've become a programmer, it's like even more so than that. In that cartridge, they've written all these lines of code that's gotten compiled into some binary format that can run, and
right.
and they've put so much into this tiny little microscopic thing,
And
and
it's finished. It's
and
a
then
complete
it's finished, it's complete, and
piece.
there's just like obviously you can go through the logic of it's like, well, this is how it works, this is how computers work, blah blah blah, but like that all that aside, like that's magical, man. And there's a reason I'm still passionate about what I do, my hobbies, games, like that magic has not worn off for me. Like it's as I continue to go a little deeper into this, it's like just I just explore more of the mystery and the magic that is software and coding and building games and worlds and cultures like you mentioned. So Earthbound, I think your inspiration of Earthbound, which unfortunately I never played, but it reminds me that yeah, man,
It's exactly the
beautiful.
same. It's like
Mhm.
in the past when there was like a good album and everybody would
Mhm.
sit in a room and listen to one record over from start to finish again, and you keep hearing new things and you keep like having new thoughts because of this one finished complete work of art that's been encapsulated in a vinyl. It's
Mhm.
what happened to you with Ocarina of Time. It's what
Mhm.
happened to me with Earthbound. Like you put this thing on, you hit play, and streaming at you is just somebody, whoever created it, the artist's consciousness just keeps coming at you, and you keep picking up on new little bits of it that you didn't discover before. Just like books, like we live in a time now when things are quick bites. Like
Mhm.
I remember seeing a podcast recently. I think it was a Joe Rogan. Somebody on there was saying that like you'll never hear somebody say, did you see that TikTok video from like 5 months ago? No, like you have to keep consuming new bits. It's not
Mhm.
the same kind of package delivered
Mhm.
rich morsel that I think, not to say it's wrong, not to say it's
Mhm.
bad, but just, uh, yeah, inspiration coming from something that was 1,000 million brushstrokes as compared to just two quick ones in the
Dude,
right place.
right. And it's interesting. Modern games too, the approach. It's like every game that comes out today is an early release. And then they bring in these like downloadable content to like finish the game. And really it seems like the like if someone's building a successful mobile game, there's no like one off, oh yeah, we're done with it, here you go. Like
Oh,
buy it for $3 off the app store. Like you don't see that anymore. You see a free game that has continual updates, and it's like however long this game lasts is how long the developers are going to keep continuing to add content and build on top of it. And so it's almost like this era of at least digital video game media is almost like in the past. Um,
yeah,
you still see games like that, don't get me wrong, but it anyway, we're in a different era. There's no doubt about that.
they'll come
Um,
through though. You're right.
mhm.
Sea of Stars, there's a lot of polish there. Like
That's a good
I
point.
think it's an ode back to some of the older ways of making games, and it was success. But in order to do that nowadays, yeah, it's harder to be successful. And it brings us back to your original question: why multiplayer?
Mhm.
Because like, I I can't finish something that grand. Like it
Mhm.
has to somehow. I need to take shortcuts in order to deliver this thing. And maybe you'll ask. I don't want to
No, go
add
for it.
too much more detail on that, but
No, but yeah,
uh,
go for it.
it's part of the reason that I think you talked to me at one point about building games that have a 45-minute window rather
Mhm.
than an expansive,
Mhm.
like the entire game takes place in 45 minutes.
Mhm.
I mean, just as a means to be able to build this thing
Mhm.
and the systems inside of it, so that there's actually, like you always mentioned, scope, like a scope that's actually achievable. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been so ambitious as to try to build an MMO if I were to start this thing again. I don't know if that was another one of your questions, but
No, no, but it's an interesting point, and I've got a similar. Well, again for the listeners, like the way I found Trevor is kind of crazy because we have such similar paths. Both come from a Flash background. Both have currently web technology skill sets that we've used to build games, and we're both like building similar games. Like, I mean, Kingmaker is not nearly as fleshed out as Aether is, but very similar project in scope and
It's uncanny
and in
how similar,
direction.
really.
And, you know, that's a project that's been living in my head for a long, long time, similar to you. And now it's a project that's actually been worked on for about 5 years. Of course, it's not like an everyday endeavor, but it's, you know, one of those passion projects. Like, oh man, I have a free weekend. I want to add fishing to the game or whatever in the inventory screen. Like, and it's going to be one of those things I can always go back to. Like, after talking with you, like I already have like things I want to go back to and add on it. Cause I have kind of taken a break from it, working on one-off projects, game jam projects, and like mobile game I'm working on. And it's been good to take a break because these projects can burn you out because they're so big in scope. But
Absolutely.
I've learned a lot. Like, I've learned a lot about scoping projects, and like also like with the modern day video game consumer wants, like they do want, and that's what I've been telling you, like bite-sized experiences. I'm afraid long gone are the days of like your traditional MMO like a World of Warcraft or MapleStory or RuneScape, where it's like, oh, I need to get to level 99 in my strength skill, and it's gonna take me like 6 months of playing straight or something, you know? It's like, no, people want to get that experience of like level 99 in strength, but like in that 30-minute, 45-minute single playthrough. And so you do see a lot of games that now, like popping up.
Yeah. Any of the MOBAs, like that was the first real, I feel like,
dude,
version of that.
100%. Dota, the first Dota and All Stars, and then League of Legends soon after that. I feel like that genre has been such an influencer to me lately, because I'm not necessarily trying to build a 5-on-5 like battle game, but like you could perhaps have a similar scoped game that's like an MMO experience inside that 45-minute timeline.
For sure. For sure.
But those are just ideas. We're kind of getting off the rails. I did want to ask a few more questions about Aether while we have it up. While Action Jake is just cozying up by this fire right now.
Hanging out with our man Derek.
Derek, man, don't hit Derek with the
No,
Lizzie.
I won't. I'm not going to disrespect Derek.
Derek looks like he would hit us right now.
Totally would.
So the next question I had is, if you could change one thing about Aether, what would it be?
Good segue, actually. I would probably try to make it more as you describe your vision for Kingmaker.
Mm-hmm.
Not just a linear, what do you call it, progression of now you need to go to this level and travel to this level and then travel to this level. Rather, just like different little arenas, like same sort of like item system, same like. I love having a really complex item system that has random implemented in the right ways. That's huge to me, but that can be done inside of a game that I don't have to keep building new maps. I don't have to keep cutting out new NPCs, like some sort of instance of like, okay, there's 3 maps, and I think that's how Kingmaker is actually set up. There's like 4 maps you can somehow be dropped into. I think there's a reason a lot of the games went that direction, because it's much more manageable, and then you can add content in sort of smarter ways while still keeping people's interests. People don't need to linearly progress as they did in the great World of Warcraft experience. Like, other forms of progression are much more manageable. I think that's the big one, man.
Yeah,
and meeting you actually helped me to be able to describe that. And I think those ideas were originally, they came from the, what is it? What's the name of this item? The cranium of Action Jake.
Well, I feel so honored, man. My goodness. Well, first of all, dude, I hope I'm not influencing you too much, because, dude, the modern day, or maybe I'll say the old school MMO experience is still very much sought after. I mean, look at Final Fantasy 14 success. I mean, it's definitely done some modern things, and I don't play that game, so I might be messing up. But like, for example, like raiding and like the boss battles, it's just like you go into the boss battle. It's like there's no dungeon leading up to the boss. It's like you spawn and fight the boss, and you know, guilds like practice to build to like train against just defeating the boss for like months if it's like the modern content and stuff. But they also have like more of a traditional dungeon crawling, leveling up, getting better gear over a long period of time. And dude, I think Final Fantasy 14 is like one of the most successful MMOs of all time, and it's still going on. I don't think it's not showing any signs of slowdown. So that itch still needs to be scratched. That
But you
being
need a team. You need a big team.
that being said, and you just brought it up, it's different
Yeah.
when you're a solo indie developer trying to make it work.
But just you saying that made my heart feel good. So you can
Good.
tell the interest in building something like that is still here. I just,
100%.
yeah,
And
the
dude,
heart doesn't know any better. It wants to build it, but
100%. And like, dude,
yeah,
I was just gonna say, like, you know, there's a reason in like specific genres are very popular with indie developers today. Like, for example, the roguelike genre. And that's what's been a huge inspiration for a lot of the projects I want to build, because roguelikes have this idea of like there's randomness, like randomly procedural generated dungeons. There's permadeath typically. Roguelike versus roguelite or roguelike, there's a difference there. So if you're kind of talking about like a roguelike, it might have combat like this, like action combat versus a traditional rogue combat. It's like, you know, turn-based. But I say all that because like there's a reason why that's a popular genre with indie developers, because it keeps that scope manageable. It's like you have your procedurally generated dungeons, you make some bosses or whatever, you make it permadeath, which means part of the core gameplay loop is replaying the game. It's like, okay, I got to like the third floor of the dungeon. I want to play again, see if I can get to the fourth floor with better gear, higher level,
right on.
stronger. And so when you naturally build in replayability that's able to reuse the content of the game over and over without wearing out the player, that's just like a formula for a manageable scope for a solo indie video game developer and an actual enjoyable experience for the player.
That's the direction that, yeah, that I think that's why you see so many of those. And it also hails back to like, you always see these roguelites associated with indie, because that's how it was. Like, if you think about it, like the earliest platformers are, it's permadeath. Like Mega Man X, you get like 3 continues.
Yeah, totally.
So for
Dude.
sure.
Those
For
retro
sure.
games have so much influence on modern day indie titles, and I freaking love it. Like Sea of Stars is a
Yep.
great example. Dude, another game, Eastward. Have you heard of Eastward?
It's one of the few games I've beaten recently.
Oh, dude. I was going to say, you would
Yeah.
love that game because,
I do
man,
love that
pixel
game.
art. I started it. I never beat it, but I need to go back and revisit that game. Well, dude, here we go, getting off top again. So another question about Aether. As you've been developing it, what has been like the intended audience? Have you had that in mind?
You got these questions laid out in a really good order. Uh, so I can kind of just state probably, I guess, not too obvious, but obvious, the people in their 30s to 40s, the people that have started out on NES, SNES, even N64. I think pixel art in general, like, I don't know if it's ever going to go away, just because like there's so much history of it. Like there's so many games built on it, and it's kind of like where it all started, and then it's sort of like you could consider it like the golden era of video games. Like even if you get into PlayStation, there's still a lot of really good titles that are pixel art.
Well, it's an aesthetic, man. It's not going anywhere. Just like oil painting's not going anywhere. That's not going out of style.
Yep.
And that, dude, something I thought it might, but with all these indie titles using pixel art over the past decade, it's like, okay, pixel art. Like if you have a gaming studio and all you do is like 2D pixel art games, you have a good chance of success right there.
For sure.
You don't need to do all these complex 3D ray tracing assets. Anyway, well, dude, it's interesting that that's your target audience because I guess similarly to the Kingmaker project, again, going back to like why it was designed the way it is, where it's like bite-sized gameplay experiences. I think as someone like myself, man, if I could play video games all day, I would, but I have a full-time job. I have some side pursuits I'm doing. I'm building games. Oh my gosh. Building games and playing games are two different things. You can't do them both at the same time as much as I want to. And
Well
so
said, man.
I think like selfishly a big reason I'm building that project has been I want that experience because as much as I want to go deep down the rabbit hole of Final Fantasy 14 or the re-envisioned World of Warcraft Classic, I would love to just spend my weekends and afternoons doing that. Like, dude, I don't have the time. My ambition and drive is too high right now. I'm not going to spend all that time playing those MMOs as much as I like crave that experience of like leveling up my character, teaming up with friends and like online strangers and having the whole MMO experience. So I think like we have similarly intended audiences because it's like mine's has the full-time job in mind of like, oh, you have a 9 to 5. You don't have 3 hours to go run a dungeon on a Tuesday night. How
One
about
thing I noticed,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt, but your Discord channel, Cozy Game Dev, is sort of the solution, I feel, to this issue where you can't spend all your time playing games, but you still want to learn about what is in the atmosphere, the community that you're building there. And I'm sure other people like have the same sort of thing going on where you have a bunch of different people talking about different games saying, hey, did you see this? Did you see the systems in this game? So I'll peek in your channel and I noticed that going on. And that's, I think, the way to, you have all of these eyes looking because you can't possibly play them all. You can't possibly, but just that community that you have around exploring what's coming over the horizon is huge. And it's the same in any field, like web dev, like you need to know the new technologies coming forward, but it's exactly it. Like it's impossible to play through these games, study their systems while building games in your free time while holding a full-time job.
Yeah, man, it's a lot.
Yeah,
But dude,
but I think
yeah, go
you're
ahead.
doing it really well. Your approach,
Well, I
the
appreciate
tools
that,
you're
man.
using.
I really appreciate that. That Discord server in particular has come together really organically. It's a lot of like old coworkers we've been competing in game jams with, and then friends and friends of friends that have kind of come together. It's like, oh, I want to build games. So yeah, if anyone's listening that wants to join that server, it can be done. I'm Gizmolo on Discord. Add me. I can get you an invite. Um, all right. Well, that answers that question, and it's crazy. I feel like I'm talking to a mirror right now because, like, yeah, I would have said something very similar about the intended audience. What? So here's one more question. Tell me in your words what sets Aether apart from other MMOs.
Will be what sets it apart. It's easy to answer the inspirations for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess off the top of my head, uh, one thing that I wanted to make sure I created, and I mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, was something that felt tight and fast with a good frame rate
Mm-hmm.
that you could pop Google Chrome, you could pop Firefox open. Uh, if for some reason you wanted to show it on your Android projector, like you could open the browser and it would run, like without me having to bundle all these different things, but just like a tight, fast paced, because Fantasy Online, as cool as
Mm-hmm.
it was point and click. You don't need really super advanced net code if everything's click based, right? You click on a monster, it calculates. I mean, I might be speaking a little bit out of my ass, but I wanted something where you mentioned in the very beginning, where it felt like Zelda, where it felt like there's some dueling involved, like FPSy almost, and which is the reason that I'm kind of like binding all the questions together, which is the reason that the net code becomes
Mm-hmm.
such a big issue. Because if you want like
Yeah.
something that's that performant, you're going to be struggling with the network layer a lot. But I guess that's, I feel what separates it is just its responsiveness while still being able to run both on a phone and a browser. Um, Also, uh, the ability for just custom art to be quickly implemented into the game. I don't have what are they called? Non-cardinal directions like
Mhm.
northeast, south. Like so, if I put your head into the game in like probably 10 minutes. So maybe those two things. There's probably a better answer for that, but maybe we can leave that up to the viewer if they jump in and play around with it.
No, I mean it's interesting, man. Because yeah, I had a similar philosophy behind Kingmaker, and really my entire game development career since I was a kid is I would play games like, uh, I don't know why Final Fantasy 13 comes to mind. We're like, and I don't know if anyone's played that, but it's close to the traditional Final Fantasy games where it's turn based, but then it kind of adds this like almost like real time combat system where you like see your character like run up and attack the enemy and then come back, and that's probably my favorite Final Fantasy game of all time, Final Fantasy 13. Um, but like it left me wanting more. Like I really wanted to control lightning and go and slash that monster myself. And then of course, what Final Fantasy 15 comes out and it's like ever since then now they do the 7 remake, 16 is out and they're all action combat games and they know where the direction of like games are going like while turn based is still again it's an aesthetic and people are going to want to play those games forever. um I think the newer generation of gamers that are coming up like want quick paced action and like the ability to slash a sword with the press of a button versus like putting in an input
Makes
on a
complete sense, man.
menu.
For them, everything's tactile,
Mm-hmm.
like as well. Like they're born and then they set an iPod upon the newborn baby, and it learns not maybe not that quickly they're introduced, but
No, but you're
pretty
right. Like
quickly.
babies
They want to
are.
be able to push buttons and things to happen quickly, I'm sure.
If you grow up with an iPad, like you're already like privy to like very nuanced user interface that like perhaps like middle aged people like can't even like compete with. So it's very interesting the times we're growing up in, and um, that does make me think about something else. And now I'm gonna drop that point. What were you just talking about?
I took us way out
No,
to babies with iPads, man.
babies with iPads.
it's, it's my
Oh,
fault.
oh, this is a random point. This is a random point, but we're talking about like developing these types of games, like action, combat. Something I've learned is like the games I want to play, and I'm wondering if you can relate this. The games I want to play aren't necessarily always the funnest to build. Like for example, I've worked on like a strategy RPG game that's like tactical RPGs, turn-based combat on like a grid-based board, and making
Yes.
that game was super fun. But I'm because like you're putting all these menus together, you're creating the weapon types, the unit types, you're setting up the board for how the levels look or how the level design is really and stuff like that, and like building that game was actually super fun. But guess what? Playing that game, I'm not super into tactical RPGs. I played Final Fantasy Tactics, but it's a great game, but like not one of my favorites because I'm not into those types of games. So there is a difference between like what you want to play versus like what's fun to like develop as a game developer. I'm learning there's like so I've become much more open-minded towards the types of games I build where it's like, man, if I have fun building it, like that's all that matters. Fun playing it, that's up to the players. Because dude, I've had
I
experiences
I love tactical RPGs, by the way. So
okay,
I
good,
I have to
good.
play your game. I bet
Well,
it's
yeah,
I bet it's super fun.
it was one of
But
it,
yeah,
dude. It's
well said.
actually an online tactical RPG. I built it in my coding boot camp. Um,
That's awesome, man.
crazy web tech, all that. Yeah, I'll have to show you. I'll show you offline.
I'd love to see that. Very cool.
But
Post a link to it too in the
I'll
video.
sure, sure, sure. And I'll. So the other thing was, I. It's interesting because like there's stuff in Kingmaker, for example. I have action combat right now. I have a very simple like sword slash mechanic. So I was like, I need like kind of like a combo string where it does like a slash stab slash thing. And as I was like coding that and building it, I was realizing it's like, man, well, I want this in the game. I want to play this. I'm actually not enjoying developing it because it's very nuanced. Like there's so much tweaking to do to make it right, and then it's like you might get it right, but then your level that you design, it's not catered towards it, so you might have to scratch all that. And that's been my experience with like some like action components. Like, man, the games I want to play, I don't necessarily want to build.
I can relate completely,
Yeah.
man. And that's why the dream is game making full time, because then you can have the time to make a proof of concept of just that feature,
Mhm.
just the slash attacks, and then pair that up against like six different other concepts. Like, and I guess the skill gets easier. I wouldn't know because I was sort of in the same place with how the attacks work in Aether. Uh, Six or seven different versions of how attacking with two weapons and then having a bar maybe that
Mhm.
controls the damage, like all of that stuff. How do you even prototype it?
You
I
got the
bet,
stamina, I noticed.
yeah, the stamina, like maybe the wiser, like senior game devs
Mm.
or like have like some process where they're writing this just simply down on a piece of notebook paper. You know, the Jedi meme, like high up devs. What's the meme where there's like the grunt level like
Mhm.
dev and then the bell curve?
Yeah.
They're both writing it on notebook paper.
Dude, well, man, it's so interesting. Like, dude, JRPGs, like RPGs in specific, in particular, games like Ether, there's a lot of like micro systems in the game, like stats, for example. Like, how does your strength
Huge,
stat impact how much damage you do when you hit
right?
an enemy? And then it's like you're fighting a blue crab. How much defense does he have that mitigates that damage buff that you get? So I love these types of systems in games. Like my favorite types of games are RPGs, specifically like action RPGs. That's where my name comes from, by the way. Action Jake RPG.
Right on.
Anyway,
I pulled up the calculate stats
there you go.
spaghetti
Oh,
code
sweet.
function
Here,
from my game. That
I'll full screen this so we can take a gander. Man, here we're looking at the guts right now.
we're looking at a function that's how many lines long is it? I guess it's not that many lines long. The order in which it's you have to calculate which items are equipped, which ones are giving you strength, so that the
Mm-hmm.
next items in the list can see if the requirement is met. I had to actually arrange the array based on which item's strength
Mm.
requirement is the lowest. I forget how it works. There's a comment in here, but it's the same as in Diablo 2. Like if you're wearing two
Okay.
items and you somehow like you were buffed up to like 100 strength and then like somehow your strength goes back down and you can't wear them anymore, they turn red on you because you don't
Mm.
like that whole uh, you asked the question about one of the most difficult things. This was pretty tricky. Still not net code level tricky, but just figuring out that simple, like you mentioned, system of, especially if you make things based on requirements, it gets pretty nutty. And then figuring out a way that people can't just hack it. For a while in Diablo 2, you could boost your strength and then wear an item that had strength on it, and it
Mm-hmm.
would lock itself in place. And then they fixed it later. So it's cool to see that like they struggled with the same issues that I did.
Dude, that's super cool. I know who to go to when I start implementing my stat system.
No,
You're the senior dev in that meme. I'm the junior dev.
I'm,
So
I'm the
thanks for.
senior stat dev. Yeah.
So okay, this is a good question. We're looking at a TypeScript file right now. Utils.ts TypeScript, being a superset of JavaScript, a very popular web technology. I can't
There
say.
may or may not be a lot of
Oh,
any
that's
types in
okay.
here.
It's okay, man. We won't have to show anyone the innies. No, but it's a very popular web technology language right now, and I can't say enough positive things about TypeScript. Like that's where I make my money, honestly, in my day job. So my next question is, why did you choose to use web technologies for Ether when you could have used Unity or Unreal or even open source game engines like Godot?
Um, Well, the main elephant in the room is having to upskill and learn Unity. I mean, that's going to take some time. Uh, Now, if I had to, I'd probably have tried to write this in Godot just because I think you mentioned it in a conversation we had. You have a lot of things out of the box that just work. You're not trying to figure out a lot of these intricate systems. One thing for me using these web technologies is my game, like a lot of the times when you just see, like you mentioned, a roguelite, and you see the lighting like coming off something and the way the players move around, there's a feeling that somebody will just say, this feels like it was made in Unity. If you play Aether, like I don't think you're going to get that impression. Like the feeling, the core of the skeleton of the systems, it doesn't feel like Unity. It doesn't feel. Maybe that answers the other question better. Just how the player moves, which I don't think necessarily is a bad thing, but being as it is, there's so many people learning to like these editors make game dev so much more accessible to everyone that it's unless you do a lot of tweaks within that engine, unless you know that engine enough that you can start to tweak the underlying core of how movement works, how lighting works, then it's gonna originally your early games are gonna feel like all the other games.
And
I guess that's one plus for the web
yeah,
tech.
dude, and you know, I asked this question a little selfishly because I've made the same decision with Kingmaker. I have been working on some Godot projects, but um, very similar answer to you. And you also are using Phaser, which you've mentioned, but we haven't talked too much about. Phaser, as far as I understand it, really is like it's a front end game engine for the browser, so it handles a lot of like some typical game engine things for you, like rendering and sound effects, like getting your sound effects and music to work and getting your animations to work, presumably. I haven't used Phaser, so I'm kind of just talking out my ass
Exactly,
right now,
man.
but
No, it's exactly it. It gives
mm,
you it's just a lot of nicer developer experience around, like you said, managing all of your assets, communicating with HTML canvas. They have a sprite class. They have a container class. Uh, I'm actually running Phaser. There was a guy, we should probably link his GitHub channel if we're going to mention, but he was able to port Phaser to, he even in his Git, he doesn't recommend it. He says, don't run Phaser on the back end if you don't have to. For that, like, here, run this, like, use this arcade physics library. But I'm running Phaser on both the front end and the back end just to keep my entities in check. So I can use the same functions. I can share code between the two of them. And that's another reason I think I picked web dev is like, if you go to my wiki, uh, all of the same code that I'm using in game, I can use to display. I built like the inventory screen, the equipment screen. I wanted to try to get the quests to show up here as well. I can use these on the website as well as in the game. Like sharing code, I like TypeScript backend, TypeScript front end, TypeScript on the wiki. Like
I got
that
you.
to me feels really, really good.
Uniform. It's like you can copy and
Uniform,
paste the code if you need to get the wiki to work the way you want it to.
right on, and just solid. Like the exact same code is being used to render these items onto the canvas.
Yeah. And I guess for those that might not be super technical, he was talking about front end entities and back end entities or client entities. You have to represent your client side entities, like your character moving on the screen has like a data set that represents it. And on the back end, since this is a client server architecture, you have a similar data set, but it doesn't have to hold all the same things. Like, for example, you don't have to hold on to like the PNG files or the texture files that show the character on the front end. You don't have to show that on the back end or like hold it on the back end because the back end doesn't
No one's gonna see it.
have
Yeah,
any visual representation. So keeping
except the server
those
ghosts.
exactly. So seeing those or keeping those synchronous is why you actually are using Phaser on the back end, so you could represent your server side entities and your client side entities kind of in a similar manner.
Right on. And whatever function they're using for the different speeds, it's it just made it a lot easier so that I don't have to figure out how to write those functions in both places or how to match the phaser implementations on the front end with mine that I built in the back end.
Got you.
So I think the thing's called geckos.io.
Okay.
We can maybe link him
Yeah,
because
sure.
I forget his name, but a lot of his packages are another part of the reason I was able to get my worst enemy net code to work at all. his interpolation library as well.
Well, that's interesting, and I looked into phaser. It was very. I had a few. I dove pretty deep into the phaser documentation, thinking I might be using it for my project or any web dev game project. Yeah, this is phaser right here. I think they just redid the website too, so it looks a lot better. Phaser is a great project, open source. You can go look at the source code on GitHub. But I didn't use Phaser. I started with Pixie.js in my game engine. And then when I decided I wanted like more robust rendering features, I switched to Three.js. So modern, yeah, the what the current state of my game engine looks like is
You're actually using
yeah.
Three.js.
I use Three.js.
This is big, man. People are doing all kinds of things with this library, and they
People are
have been
doing
for a
cool
while.
stuff, and now there's something called Babylon JS. Have you seen Babylon? Babylon, I don't want to like compare, but Babylon might be better. Ooh, I like that project. Babylon JS, yeah.
This has been around for a while
It
too.
has, but it's gotten a lot of really good updates. So I think that's like this is both the positive and the negative about web development, game projects in particular. Is like there's no like one right solution because you have kind of like a collection of pretty good solutions that you could use. In your case, Phaser. In my case, Three.js. Someone else's case, maybe Babylon.js. So it's not like it's like Unity. Like you just go to Unity. You don't need anything else. You might use a cool plugin on Unity, but like at the end of the day, the core of your game is using Unity. Which to me, this is both positive. You have multiple options, but also a negative. You might see someone building a web tech game using some obscure technology that you've never heard of, but he's building something really cool and you want to use it, and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I learn this? So, and
For
man,
sure.
I like
Lots of things to make you more decisive in a field where
exactly.
it's like, yeah,
There's
not
already a
good to be indecisive.
there's already a billion things going on at once, and
Yeah,
then
exactly.
deciding your
Exactly.
rendering library. Um, well, dude, I could go in a million different directions from there, but I think I'm gonna rein us back in one more time. So let me ask you this question. Um, Tell me, man, what is your dream project? We're looking at all these game engines. We're looking at the Muro Board. We're looking at Aether. I'd probably pronounce that wrong. Is it Aether or Ether?
I think it's both and none.
Okay.
I think it's both. I've heard it pronounced both different ways. What do I say?
I heard
I
you
say
say eight.
Aether,
Yeah, I heard you say Aether
but I
as a
think it's
chip.
actually Ether.
Okay.
I think yours is more true to I guess it's a Greek word. It actually the first time I heard of that word was a JRPG called Tales of Destiny, which is the only Tales game that I've ever really gotten deep into.
Tales
Uh,
series are great.
yeah, they're still making new ones too.
Tales of Arise, man, it's a great game.
So you
Yeah.
dream job or dream project.
Project. Great. Perhaps it's a dream game project to be precise.
Well, whatever it has to be, I think to follow the sort of timeline of this interview, the thing that I keep coming back to is something where I can sit in a field as the dev, and there's a world of people, whether they're NPCs or if we stay multiplayer, real life people moving around me, and like I'm building a world, I'm building the systems, the physics, but hopefully in this dream, it's one that can come to a succinct conclusion. You know, a dream that actually resolves into something tangible rather than this RPG. It just feels like the higher the smoke rises, the more things, the more it dissipates. The further away the end is going to be. So it has to have an item system. Like it has to have something technical about collecting goodies. Like I mean, I could go on a tangent about like as a kid, like liking to collect different types of beetles and insects. It's always collecting things. I'm sure Animal Crossing fans will
Mm.
understand that compulsion. Uh, I'm not sure exactly the shape. Talking to you with a lot of the ideas that you have in your scope, in your sites, I think some of those could fit into the Dream project as well. But then you were talking about with Final Fantasy, the one that's the MMO. I haven't played it.
14.
That style not being dead. Well, you have like the big wigs like Zuckerberg still pushing forward with his metaverse, and eventually when that technology comes into play, who's to say if there's not another golden age of questing with your friends, like but in first person mode when it gets to the point where the controls feel responsive and quick rather than just being like, who knows, it might come around again. So maybe that's in the Dream, building something like an MMO and with that tech. It's a good question, man.
I mean, Aether could be that project.
Aether could totally be that project.
It seems like
And
you're
then,
kind of already building out your Dream project a little bit, and then
for sure.
now
And
the
if you
bar
have
has
room
been
for,
set. You know.
yeah, if you have room for a senior player stat developer and Kingmaker at some point.
Oh man, I need to hire you like right now. Maybe I can actually finish this project. It won't be another 5 years project down the road where it'll be actually done. Speaking of 5 years, where do you see yourself in 5 years, man? You see yourself still working on Aether, working on other projects, doing cool things?
Hopefully making games, man, but hopefully not being in a basement smoking cigarettes, nor in an attic, maybe or maybe not uh, smoking some illicit substances.
You've come this far, man.
Hopefully, I know where I don't want to be.
Hey,
But
dude, that's actually, dude, honestly, so this is a little off topic, but you know, friends and family members that are still kind of trying to find their purpose, their dream, I always tell them it's like, figure out what you don't want to do, because that's going to help you guide you to what you do want to do. So guess what? Go try things, man. Go try it. And if you hate it, guess what? You're on the right path. That means you'd never have to do that again. So that's not a bad answer at all.
Wise, man. I think Dr. Seuss Cat in the Hat, I remember he's searching for something in the house and he tries to find all of the places that it isn't before he's able instead of finding where it is, find where it isn't.
I love that, dude.
But
There
no,
you
I
go.
think your advice is better. Cat, but still, Dr. Seuss was a great mind, man.
He was. And dude, like,
Gotta give respect.
obviously you're on the right path, man. I don't think you're not going to find yourself smoking anything in a basement having to like rebuild a project like this. You got the project built, man. Now you can run with it and then just expand from there.
For sure.
Well, dude, this conversation has been super wonderful. This has easily been my most enjoyable podcast, playing a game with you. I'm going to have to keep doing this more often in future episodes. As we just wrap up here, you know, the main question I was going to ask, and we'll certainly link in the description so people can find you. But yeah, man, where can people find you on the internet? If, for example, they're curious about, maybe they want to try this game out, Aether, maybe they want to talk to you on Discord, where can they find you?
So I'm not sure what my Discord link is, but maybe you could link it in the channel.
Yeah, I can. I can get it for you.
If you want to horse around in my unfinished web tech RPG, you can hop on to aether.onrender.com. And actually here there's a link to Discord too.
Oh, nice.
It's not a very good call to action, but you can play or join Discord from here. So maybe that's the link you can put. But this has been a treat, man. This is playing games on podcasts is a great thing. It's really cool to be able to play with you, and also I'm glad that your face was actually in our game for the session.
Dude, that was awesome. That was a pleasant surprise. We did do some prep before, just like what are we going to do in the game, but I had no idea that he put my face in. That was a pleasant surprise. So thanks for doing that, man. That's awesome. I feel rightly immortalized in a video game because Aether will never die.
Meant to be.
All right, man. Well, hey, thanks so much for being on, and thanks to everyone that was listening. I hope you have a great day.
Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.